All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're unpacking a seriously mind-bending piece of speculative fiction, Mira Habe's novel, The Cartography of Absent Rooms. If you've been following the bizarre intersections of weird urbanism and, well, the literal erasure of reality, you're going to absolutely love this explainer. We're talking about how the bureaucratic systems we build actually shape, and sometimes literally delete the physical world. Let's get into it. There's this incredibly haunting epigraph right at the start of the book. It says, "The map is not the territory, but it is all we have to navigate by." And we have been navigating so long that we have forgotten the map was ever drawn by human hands. It just completely sets the tone, right? It perfectly captures that core theme of our totally blind reliance on bureaucratic records. We trust the data so much that we completely forget these maps are made by deeply fallible human beings. So it begs the question, what actually happens to a physical brick-and-mortar space when the digital consensus just decides to delete it? In the novel, we're thrown into the city of Verada, and Verada has gone through 14 massive administrative restructurings in just 40 years. 14! Every single time they update the city's data grid, things get lost. But this isn't just a metaphor in the book. It is a very literal, physical crisis. Which brings us to the core mystery of the unmapped city, and this incredibly weird phenomenon known as the Room 7 anomaly. You get this stark, almost jarring contrast in Verada. On one side, you've got the official record. It's clean, it's seamless, running on these pristine 26-hour processing cycles. But then, you have the experienced reality. When the databases get scrubbed, the actual physical rooms don't just vanish into thin air. They linger as these unmapped spaces, essentially architectural ghosts, haunting the margins of the city. So you have this massive clash between the clinical perfection of a corporate audit and the gritty, unrecorded lived history on the ground. And that's where Kael Morrow comes in. Kael's a relocator. Think of him as a private detective, but for lost architecture, which is a pretty wild job description, honestly. He gets handed this super ominous assignment from a Dr. Vasenko to investigate Room 7 of the Vasenko Institute. It's a research lab that has been entirely smoothly excised from every index out there. Officially, the map says Room 6 flows right into Room 8, no gap. But in the physical world, Room 7 is absolutely still sitting right there. So Kyle steps inside and he encounters this phenomenon called categorical independence. It sounds like heavy pseudoscience, but Heba uses a brilliant metaphor here. Imagine a word that's been carefully removed from a dictionary. It's gone from the official record, right? But people are still speaking it. And because it's completely detached from its official definition, it starts to mutate and mean something entirely new. The exact same thing is happening to physical space here. Untethered from the map, the room breaks free from normal relational rules and starts acting in ways you just can't predict. So, what's the actual science behind this erasure? To figure that out, we have to dig into the system logs left behind by Dr. Sena Vos. Dr. Vos was the brilliant physicist studying Room 7 right before it got wiped, and her logs are pure cosmic horror. She documented the symptoms of what she called ontological drift. Basically, if you stand in Room 7, a chair still looks like a chair, but the actual concept of sitting feels totally arbitrary. People's estimates of the room's dimensions wildly fluctuate based on their mood. Voices become entirely sourceless with these weird delays. And the most terrifying part? If you stay too long, you lose your continuous personal identity context. You literally forget why you are who you are. And it's all written out with this chillingly dry academic precision. How does a simple room even get to that state? Well, Vos mapped out the escalation. Step 1, obviously, is administrative erasure. The room gets deleted from the database. But because the physical space is still sitting there, it starts accumulating unobserved duration. It builds up this intense ontological pressure, and then, bam, it hits categorical independence. And then the really crazy thing happens. The room starts broadcasting. Room 7 basically turns into a radio tower, reaching out to connect with other erased spaces and building a completely hidden network of absences. And that brings us to a frankly staggering number, 412. A quantum physicist colleague of Dr. Vos managed to tap into Room 7's carrier frequency and decoded exactly 412 coordinates. Those were other forgotten, deliberately unmapped locations broadcasting back. Meaning, Room 7 wasn't just some random glitch. It was the focal point of a massive, hidden, underground geography. And this is where we realize we're not just looking at a scientific anomaly, but a full-blown 30-year conspiracy regarding its origin. Kael and Dr. Vasenko start following these breadcrumbs into a sealed transit maintenance tunnel to find the very first erased room. And what they find is a cover-up dating back 3 decades. Back in the 2070s, these systematic unmappings quietly began. By 2091, a rogue cartographer named Orla Mast realized what was going on and actually hid a physical map of the erased city. Then from 2094 to 2108, you see this continuous, highly targeted erasure of specific spaces. So present-day Room 7? It was basically just an accident, resulting from a 30-year deliberate experiment in institutional forgetting. When you actually look at the data Orla Mast left behind, it's pretty devastating. Look at what these spaces actually were. That transit tunnel unmapped in 2091, it was a secret meeting point. The utility corridor from 2103 was a community resource center, and the 2108 subbasement was an unarchiviable artist's workspace. The author lays this out super objectively to show that the system architects weren't using bulldozers, they were using databases. They quietly excised any spaces that were socially or politically inconvenient to their sterile, perfect vision of the city. And this hits a profound sociological nerve, summed up perfectly in Kael's notes. The previous city was a city of people who had been made administratively optional. The maps of Verada had deliberate losses baked right into the code. By deleting the physical spaces where these communities gathered, the system was effectively deleting the people themselves from official reality. So, how do you even begin to fix that? That leads us to the final arc, acknowledging the lost and mastering the grammar of return. Seriously, how do you resolve a physics-defying anomaly caused by 3 decades of bureaucratic violence? Dr. Versenko has this incredible realization. Room 7 and those 412 spaces aren't malfunctioning at all, they are responding. The built environment is just trying to be whole again. The fact is, you cannot erase what actually exists, you can only make it unreachable. And when you force a space to be unreachable for that long, the pressure just builds and builds. This isn't a glitch to be patched over. It's a conversation that was violently interrupted 30 years ago, and it's finally demanding an answer. So they land on this incredibly painstaking administrative solution, which they call the process of return. They literally force the municipal data authority to open up the records and restore the coordinates. But it's not just about putting a dot back on a map. They have to formally document the true, unvarnished history of why the spaces were removed in the first place. They create a brand new category for deliberately unmapped spaces. And they officially recognize the marginalized people who had been secretly occupying these forgotten zones. And by doing that, by finally acknowledging the truth, Room 7's ontological pressure starts to drop. The city actually begins to heal. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. This novel is phenomenal science fiction for sure, but it holds up a massive mirror to our own world. If our real-world systems, our algorithms, and our databases are built on deliberate exclusions, what histories, what spaces, and what realities are maps conveniently forgetting right now? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, keep looking at the margins, and I'll catch you in the next one.